I woke up with my fingers wrapped around a cracked lantern and my boots planted in black glass dust. For one stupid second, I thought I was dead. Then the lantern hissed. A green flame guttered behind the broken lens, throwing thin light over the carved arch in front of me. The arch had teeth. Not real teeth, obviously. The city engineers kept insisting the dungeon entrance was purely architectural. Very comforting. The thing was called the Glass Maw because the doorway looked like a predator had opened its mouth under the city and decided to wait. I knew that doorway. I knew the exact chip in the left fang-shaped pillar. I knew the sour mineral smell drifting out of the tunnel. I knew the sound of Bren Holt laughing behind me. And that was when my stomach dropped so hard, I nearly fell to my knees. Because the last thing I remembered was not standing outside the Glass Maw Dungeon with a party badge on my coat. The last thing I remembered was crawling through a maintenance tunnel 11 days after this expedition went wrong, drinking condensation off pipe roots, with my hands shaking around a torn map and my name erased from the guild report. My name was Kade Mercer. I was 22 years old. I was an E-rank porter in Vayer City, a dungeon-delving city built on top of an underground labyrinth economy, where hunters became celebrities, scouts became legends, porters became invisible, and invisible people had a bad habit of disappearing without paperwork. And somehow, impossibly, I had returned to the exact morning Bren Holt abandoned me inside the dungeon. 5 minutes before he did it again. Behind me, Bren's voice rolled over the party like he owned the stone under our feet. Everyone check straps. We enter on my mark. Kade, try not to trip over your own lantern this time. The others laughed because Bren Holt was handsome, famous, B-rank, and rich enough to make cruelty sound like leadership. I turned slowly. There he stood in polished blue-black armor, silver hair tied back, gilt metal shining at his throat. Bren Holt, leader of the Azure Pike Party, winner of 3 sponsored raids, poster boy for the Hunter Guild recruitment hall, and the man who had used me as bait in my first timeline. To his right were Tessa Vane, his blade dancer, and Corin Pell, his rune mage. Both of them had signed the same illegal abandonment contract. Both of them had watched Bren order me to hold the rear while they sealed the corridor and walked away. Both of them had later testified that I panicked, fled formation, and caused my own death. Small problem with that story. I had not died. Not right away. I had survived 11 days under the Glass Maw. And while Bren was busy selling my stolen notes as elite dungeon intuition, I had learned the secret nobody cared enough to notice. The Glass Maw's reward chambers were not controlled by boss kills. They were controlled by the worthless maintenance tunnels. Airflow gates, monster patrol drains, reset valves, supply routes, tiny service passages left by whoever built the dungeon before the guild decided everything underground existed to be monetized. Hunters chased treasure. I had learned the plumbing. That sounds less heroic, I know. But when a dungeon resets at midnight and rewrites every false party claim into permanent guild record, plumbing can ruin a very famous man. The cracked lantern warmed in my hand. A strip of old parchment scratched against my wrist inside my sleeve. I froze. My map. I pulled my glove back just enough to see it tucked beneath the leather bracer. Torn edges. Burn mark across the south quadrant. My own handwriting, thin and frantic from 11 days of hunger, marked 3 tunnels that did not exist on any official guild chart. The map from my first timeline had come back with me. One line near the entrance shimmered faintly, then darkened into fresh ink. Confirmed Mawgate vestibule, air draw west-northwest, reset pressure low. I stared at it. The map had never done that before. In the first timeline, it had just been paper. Precious paper, yes, but paper. Now it was updating only after I personally confirmed a location. Not a system, not a divine sword, not a glowing goddess handing me revenge in a neat little box. A torn dungeon map that still expected me to do the work. Honestly, that felt about right. Bren snapped his fingers in my face. Kade, lantern up, unless even holding light is above your rank. I looked at him, at the man who thought he had 5 minutes before throwing away a disposable porter. Then I looked at the dungeon entrance. In the first timeline, I had begged him not to leave me. This time I smiled. Of course, I said, I'll stay exactly where you tell me. Bren's mistake was thinking obedience meant surrender. Vaer City had 3 kinds of people. The ones who went into dungeons for glory. The ones who went into dungeons for wages. And the ones who never came back, which the guild politely categorized as voluntary attrition. I belonged to the second group. At 22, I was a registered E-rank porter with a cracked lantern, a debt marker for my mother's lung tonic, and exactly 6 silver crescents hidden in my boot because banks charged risk fees to anyone below D-rank. My official role was support logistics. Unofficially, I carried spare blades, chalk, rope, ration tins, extraction charms, monster bait, and the blame when heroes made bad decisions. The Hunter Guild liked to pretend it was built on courage. It was built on paperwork. Every delve had a party contract. Every contract had a formation list, supply list, route estimate, emergency chain, injury liability clause, and exit verification. At least, that was how the law said it worked. In practice, famous party leaders treated porters like rented backpacks with legs. Bren Holt had recruited me 3 weeks before the Glass Maw run. He found me outside the East Lift Market haggling with a salve vendor over 2 copper bits. He smiled like he had discovered charity. "You know tunnel loads?" he asked. "I know weights, lamp oil, cold rations, basic ward tags, and how not to stack shock crystals next to heat charms," I said. That made him laugh. In the first timeline, I thought he liked my answer. Now I knew better. He wanted someone competent enough to be useful and poor enough to be quiet. The Glass Maw Dungeon sat beneath Vaer City's North District, feeding half the city's economy. Glass ore from its walls became scrying lenses. Maw pearls from its slimes became healer catalysts. The upper levels gave safe training routes for nobles pretending danger-built character. The deeper levels produced rare resonance cores that auction houses fought over with knives hidden behind contracts. The guild ranked delvers by combat output, mana density, kill confirmations, and public reputation. Porters had their own ranking, but nobody respected it unless a supply line failed. My public disadvantage was simple. I had low mana, no noble sponsor, no combat class, and a body that looked like it had been built from debt and skipped meals. My lungs burned in cold air. My left shoulder still ached from carrying a cracked crate of frost charges 2 jobs earlier. I was exactly the sort of person Bren could abandon and expect the city to forget. In the first timeline, he almost got away with it. After his party left me behind, I survived because panic burned out after the first 20 hours and spite took over around hour 32. I learned that warm drafts meant active monster paths. Sour drafts meant reset valves. Still air meant sealed chambers. I learned that Glass Maw stalkers hated copper dust. I learned that reward chambers opened when pressure vents were balanced after patrol displacement, not when some idiot in polished armor shouted the name of his sword technique. I also learned Bren had stolen my survival notes. After the rescue team pulled me out on the 11th day, barely conscious and officially marked as self-separated, Bren visited my infirmary bed with flowers. Flowers. He placed them beside me and leaned close enough that I could smell mint on his breath. "You're lucky we found you," he said. "Confusion after dungeon shock can make people remember things strangely." Then he took the notebook from under my pillow. By the time I could stand again, Bren had published a guide called Holt's Principles of Maw Flow. He claimed he had discovered the dungeon's hidden chamber logic through instinct, leadership, and a deep spiritual connection with subterranean combat environments. I still hated that phrase. His fame tripled, his sponsors multiplied. The guild buried my complaint under 3 review committees and 1 clerical misplacement. 2 porters died the next month following his incomplete version of my notes. That was the part I never forgave. Not what he did to me. What he taught the city to keep doing. Now I stood at the Glass Maw entrance again, lantern in hand, while Bren's team prepared to repeat history. The torn map under my bracer pulsed once, like a heartbeat through paper. I turned slightly, pretending to adjust the lantern wick. The ink had changed. Confirmed locations, 1. Unconfirmed prior marks, 37. Update condition, direct observation. Reset record window, midnight. I swallowed. So the map remembered what I remembered, but it would not fully reveal anything until I personally confirmed it again. That meant I had knowledge, not omniscience. Useful, dangerous, and extremely inconvenient. Good. Free miracles make people stupid. A shadow moved near the guild checkpoint booth. A young woman in a gray scout cloak stood beside a rack of survey poles, watching Bren with open distrust. Myra. In the first timeline, I met her on day 11, when she was part of the rescue team that found me. Back then, she was a D-rank scout nobody listened to. 3 years later, she would become Myra Thorne, the first person to chart the lower maw without losing a single porter. Today she was 19, sharp-eyed, underpaid, and already smarter than everyone around her. She caught me looking. For a second, I almost warned her about everything. Then Bren clapped his hands. "Formation," he said, "we're burning daylight." The word daylight scraped across my nerves. Because the exit sealed from the outside at sunset. And Bren knew it. The first thing I changed was not dramatic. I did not challenge Bren. I did not accuse him. I did not pull out the map and announce that I had returned from a ruined timeline with evidence, dungeon secrets, and a very reasonable amount of resentment. That would have been satisfying for about 8 seconds. Then Bren would have laughed, the guild clerk would have marked me unstable, and I would have been removed from the party before I could step inside the maw. No entry, no confirmation, no map updates, no proof. So I did what porters do best. I checked the supplies. 2 coil ropes, I said, kneeling beside the load packs. 3 oil flasks, 12 ration tins, 4 red flares, 1 blue rescue flare, 6 chalk sticks, 2 shock crystals, 1 extraction charm. Corin rolled his eyes. "Yes, Porter Mercer, we can count." "No spare wick bundle," I said. Bren looked over. In the first timeline, I had missed that. The spare wick bundle had been removed from my pack before entry. Without it, my lantern died on the second night. I spent the 3rd day following glow mold with one hand on the wall and fear chewing holes through my skull. Bren shrugged. "We're doing a 6-hour route. The Maw Upper Loop has a 12-hour emergency standard. We're not getting lost." "No," I said, calm as a ledger. "Of course not." That got Tessa to smirk. I took 1 wick from a public supply basket near the checkpoint and held it up to the clerk. "Recording emergency replacement," I said. The clerk blinked. He was a thin man with ink on his chin and the exhausted expression of someone paid to witness liability and pretend not to understand it. "Party leader approval?" he asked. Bren's jaw tightened. It was a tiny thing, ridiculously tiny, 1 wick, 1 line in the supply amendment log. But the first rule of surviving a system built on paperwork is to touch the paperwork before it touches you. Bren waved his hand. "Approved, if it makes him feel useful." The clerk stamped the amendment. Milestone 1. A confirmed supply record with my name attached. The map warmed against my wrist. I stepped through the Glass Maw entrance 3 people behind Bren, and the dungeon swallowed us. The first tunnel glittered like the inside of a broken bottle. Pale crystal veins ran through black stone. Our boots crunched over glass grit. Somewhere deep below, water dripped in slow, metallic notes. Bren moved like he expected the dungeon to applaud. Standard crescent formation, he said. Tessa left, Corin center, Kade rear. Same as before. The official upper route curved east toward the first reward chamber. Bren's plan was simple. Clear 3 slime clusters, bypass the mirror bats, reach the pearl font before a rival party, and return before the evening bell. It was a good plan if the dungeon behaved like the public map. The dungeon did not. 32 steps past the entrance, I felt the first draft brush my right cheek. Cold, dry, faintly sour. Reset valve active. I shifted the lantern left. The flame bent west. In the first timeline, I ignored that because I thought drafts were drafts. By day 7, I understood that every airflow in the maw was a sentence. Cold air meant recently opened stone. Warm air meant monster movement. Sour air meant a pressure chamber preparing to seal. Dust-heavy air meant a maintenance crawl nearby. The torn map updated. Confirmed east vestibule approach. Valve pressure rising. Service seam within 9 paces. I glanced at the wall. There it was. A vertical line in the glass, almost invisible unless the lantern flame touched it from below. I rubbed copper dust from my coin pouch onto 2 fingers and dragged them lightly over the seam. The line glowed dull amber, then vanished. Corin turned. "What are you doing?" "Checking condensation," I said. "On dry glass?" "Yes." He stared. I stared back. There is a special peace in telling the truth, in a way arrogant people refuse to understand. Bren clicked his tongue. "Leave him, some porters need rituals." We moved on. At the first slime cluster, Bren gave his usual performance. 3 clean strikes, 1 spinning cut, a burst of applause from his own team. Moss slimes were not difficult if you had enchanted steel, and no shame about posing after killing translucent pudding. The reward alcove opened with a soft chime. Inside sat 3 low-grade pearls. Bren frowned. In the first timeline, he blamed me for slowing the formation. He said we had missed the chamber's prime window. Then he pushed harder, rushed the next corridor, triggered the mirror bats, and needed a distraction. Me. This time I watched the alcove floor. 3 pearls. But the 4th socket in the stone was still damp. Not empty. Unfed. I lifted the lantern. The flame leaned toward the wall behind the alcove. Warm draft. Monster patrol drain. The chamber had registered the slime kills, but not the patrol displacement. A maintenance gate nearby had kept 1 pressure measure open. Balanced the airflow, and the 4th reward would drop. I stepped back and placed my boot over a small vent in the floor. 1 breath. 2. 3. The alcove chimed again. A 4th pearl rolled out of the wall. Everyone went quiet. Bren looked at the pearl. Then at my boot. Then at me. I gave him the expression every porter learns by month 2. Helpful, blank, and not quite afraid enough. "Loose vent," I said, "must have stuck." Bren smiled slowly. "Not grateful. Interested." That was more dangerous. Milestone 2. First practical use. And the first moment Bren realized my rituals might be profitable. Bren did not abandon me immediately this time. That was the first real change. In the old timeline, the mirror bat corridor happened at the 46-minute mark. Tessa cut too far left. Corin overcharged a light rune, and Bren needed someone noisy at the rear while his real team slipped through the side arch. He ordered me to hold position, then sealed the passage behind him. This time, the fourth pearl changed his appetite. Greedy people can delay cruelty when they smell money. Kade, Bren said as we left the first chamber, walk closer. Tessa gave him a look. He'll get in the way. He noticed the vent. I stepped on it, I said. Bren's smile sharpened, then stepped carefully. So I moved from rear porter to rear-adjacent curiosity. A tremendous promotion. The Maw's second corridor narrowed into a ribbed passage where the crystal walls reflected us in long, warped strips. In every reflection, Bren looked taller. I looked thinner. The dungeon had a rude sense of humor. I kept my lantern low and watched the flame. Left bend, warm pulse, pause. Warm pulse again after 7 seconds. Monster patrol habit. Glass ticks. They were hand-sized insects with translucent shells and needle legs. Alone, they were annoying. In a swarm, they could chew through leather straps and ruin a supply load in under a minute. Hunters ignored them because they did not count toward kill rank. Porters feared them because they loved salt, sweat, and ration seams. In the first timeline, they shredded our spare rope. Later, Bren claimed I had packed cheap gear. This time, I stopped before the bend. Bren sighed, what now? Glass ticks. Corin lifted his staff. I don't sense monsters. They're not monsters under guild classification, I said. They're dungeon pests. Then why are you talking? I pointed at the floor. There were 6 grains of pale salt near the wall. Not natural, not random. Salt fell from ration packs when glass ticks dragged them to nests. Something has been pulling supplies through that crack. Tessa snorted, or another porter spilled breakfast. Could be. I took 1 ration tin from my pack, opened it, and set a pinch of dried fish near the crack. Then I pulled the party's rope coils 2 steps away. A thin clicking sound rose from the wall. 30 or 40 tiny bodies poured out, all legs and glassy shells, swarming the fish. Corin made a disgusted noise. I capped the tin, sprinkled copper dust in a half circle, and let the ticks retreat around it. Copper did not kill them. It confused their feelers long enough to redirect the swarm. Bren watched every movement. You learned that where? He asked. Porter work. Which was true. Just not in this timeline. The map updated again. Confirmed tick nest bend. Patrol drain beyond crack. Supply hazard cleared. Route stability increased. My shoulder loosened. Not healed. Not magically strengthened. But the map's ink formed a small ring around the corridor mark, and something in my breathing shifted. The dungeon's rhythm became easier to read. I could feel where air dragged against hidden spaces, like fingertips moving under cloth. Milestone 3. First growth. Not strength in my arms, not mana in my veins. A sharper sense of flow. The maw rewarded confirmed understanding. That was new. Or maybe it had always done that, and hunters were too busy stabbing things to notice. Myra caught up with us near the second checkpoint arch. She was not part of our party. Scout contractors often crossed routes to verify hazards for the guild's public maps. Most hunters treated them like signposts that spoke too much. She stood on a narrow ledge above the corridor, gray cloak dusty, survey pole hooked over one shoulder. Azure Pike, she called down. Your route filing says Upper Crescent Loop. Why are you running without a licensed scout? Bren looked up with his public smile. Scout Thorn, always a pleasure. I asked a question, and I admired your commitment to bureaucracy. Her eyes flicked to me. Recognition did not exist yet between us, but something like instinct passed over her face. You amended a wick before entry, she said. I blinked. She had checked the public log. Myra Thorne, future legend, already terrifying. I did, I said. Why? Because 12-hour routes need 12-hour supplies. Bren laughed. He worries. Myra did not look at him. Worry keeps people alive. For the first time that morning, my throat tightened. In the first timeline, she had said something similar while helping lift me onto a rescue sled. I had been too weak to answer. Bren's smile thinned. We're on schedule. Sunset seal is at 18:00, Myra said. Outer gate closes from outside control if no party check-in is logged. We know. Do you? The corridor cooled. Bren stepped closer to the ledge. Careful. Accusing a licensed B-rank party of safety negligence without evidence is a guild offense. Myra's expression did not change, but her fingers tightened on the survey pole. I knew that look. She believed something was wrong, but she did not have proof. Not yet. I lifted my lantern slightly. Myra, I said, using her name before caution could stop me. If the north maintenance bell rings before sunset, listen for 3 chimes, not 2. Her eyes narrowed. Why? Bren turned. Why are you giving instructions to a scout? I lowered the lantern. Loose vent, I said again. Bren stared at me. There it was. A tiny fracture in his confidence. Not fear. Not guilt. Just irritation that the disposable porter had started saying things he could not immediately categorize. He leaned close enough that the others could not hear. I don't know what game you're playing, Kade, he murmured, but remember your contract. You follow my orders inside this dungeon. I looked at the map hidden under my sleeve. Then I looked at the arch ahead, where the mirror back corridor waited. I remember the contract very well, I said. That was the first warning I gave him. Naturally, he ignored it. The illegal abandonment contract was not a single document. That was what made it clever. Bren had not walked into the guild hall and filed a scroll titled permission to leave poor people underground. Even he was not that arrogant. No, the trap was split across 4 harmless-looking forms. One route assignment nomming me as auxiliary rear support. One hazard acknowledgement stating I accepted independent stationary duties if ordered. One emergency discretion clause giving Bren authority to prioritize ranked combatants during unexpected tactical separation. And one private sponsor waiver that reduced compensation to my family if I was found to have voluntarily departed formation. Separately, each clause was ugly but legal. Together, they created a quiet machine. Bren could order me to stay behind, seal a corridor, claim tactical necessity, then report that I failed to rejoin. My mother would receive 12 silver crescents and a sympathy stamp. Bren's sponsor would avoid liability. The guild would file another porter death under attrition. In the first timeline, I did not understand any of that until Myra found copies months later. This time, I understood before we reached the mirror bats. The corridor ahead glittered with hanging shards. Hundreds of thin crystal plates grew from the ceiling like broken mirrors. Behind them slept the bats, small gray things with wings that reflected torchlight in flashes. They were not deadly if approached slowly. They were very dangerous if startled. Bren raised one hand. Same place. Same moment. Same lie about to form in his mouth. Hold, he whispered. Kade, stay at the rear and guard the exit bend. If anything comes from behind, make noise. Tessa shifted left. Corin's thumb moved toward the side arch rune. My heart kicked once hard. In the first timeline, this was where fear took me. I had said alone. Bren had smiled and said, unless you want to be useful in front. Then the bats woke, the corridor erupted in shrieks, and by the time I understood what was happening, the side arch had sealed. This time, I adjusted my lantern. "Just to confirm," I said softly, "you are ordering me to remain behind as stationary rear support while the rest of the registered party advances beyond line of sight." Bren's eyes hardened. Corin looked annoyed. Tessa looked bored. "Kade," Bren said, "this is not a clerk exam." "No," I said, "it's a dungeon." "Then obey." There it was. A direct order. I gave him my second warning. The Maw records separation through door pressure, not witness statements. If that arch seals, the dungeon will know who crossed and who didn't. Corin laughed under his breath. Door pressure, very scholarly. Bren stepped closer. "You're a porter. Your job is to stand where I place you." He wanted me humiliated. He wanted me small enough to stop asking precise questions. I nodded. "Yes, party leader." Then I obeyed. Exactly. I stayed behind and guarded the exit bend. Bren's team moved forward. Tessa tossed a sound bead into the left passage. Corin touched the side arch rune. Bren struck the first mirror bat with a flash of blue mana, waking the swarm exactly as before. The corridor exploded into motion. Wings beat against crystal, reflections fractured. Bren shouted something heroic and meaningless. Tessa spun through the side arch. Corin followed. Bren backed after them, face turned toward me just long enough to smile. Then the arch sealed. In the first timeline, I ran to it and pounded until my hands bled. This time I took one step back. The map under my sleeve flared. Confirmed, mirror bat divide, party separation recorded, rear support stationary, side arch sealed from combatant side, outer exit status pending sunset control. I let out a breath. Milestone 4. First major consequence trigger. But I was not safe yet. Malicious compliance is only satisfying if you survive the compliance. The mirror bats, confused by the sudden pressure change, swept toward my lantern. I lowered the flame, covered the lens with my sleeve, and crouched beside the seam I had confirmed earlier. Airflow moved west-northwest. Maintenance seam within 9 paces. I had 6 seconds before the bats found the heat of my face. I dragged copper dust across the glass seam in the pattern I remembered from day 5 of my first survival. Not a rune, not magic, at least not the kind guild mages respected. More like pressing the right bruise on a living wall. The seam opened with a wet click. A stale draft breathed out. I slipped through and pulled the seam shut behind me as the bats struck the wall in a soft storm of wings. For 30 seconds, I stood in darkness so complete it felt thick. Then I uncovered the lantern. The maintenance tunnel stretched ahead, low and narrow, lined with dull pipes grown from the same black glass as the dungeon walls. Old condensation ran down them in silver threads. The air tasted metallic. My map drank the space. Confirmed, maintenance tunnel A3, air route active, reward chamber control line adjacent, reset cycle dormant until midnight. I laughed once quietly. Not because anything was funny. Because in the first timeline, this tunnel had been my grave, my shelter, my school, and nearly my coffin. Now it was the road Bren did not know existed. I moved. The trick to the Maw's maintenance tunnels was humility. You had to crawl. You had to listen. You had to care about scratches on pipe glass, mold direction, insect droppings, draft warmth, and the exact number of breaths between distant valve clicks. Hunters hated that. They wanted doors that opened because they were strong. Maintenance doors opened because you paid attention. At the first junction, I confirmed a supply route where root-like glass tubes carried dissolved mana toward reward chambers. At the second, I marked a patrol habit where glass ticks avoided a warm vent every 12 seconds. At the third, I found the north maintenance bell rope, stiff with mineral crust. I did not pull it yet. Timing mattered. Bren's team would spend the next hour clearing chambers with reduced rewards because the pressure balances would remain wrong. He would get irritated, then greedy, then desperate to reclaim authority. At sunset, the outer exit would seal from the outside unless the party checked in properly. At midnight, the dungeon reset would finalize all claims in the guild record. And I needed Bren alive, angry and talking before then. That was the hardest part of consequences. You had to let arrogant people keep making choices. I spent the next 4 hours becoming stronger in the least impressive way possible. I crawled through dust. I counted valve clicks. I mapped drafts by holding my cracked lantern at shoulder height, then knee height, then flat against the floor. I marked where warm air rose from monster patrol routes and where sour air leaked from chambers preparing to seal. I confirmed 3 maintenance tunnels from my old map and found one I had missed in the first timeline because I had been half-starved and less curious than terrified. The map updated only when I personally verified a space. If I guessed, nothing happened. If I relied on memory without checking, the old ink stayed faded. But when I confirmed a location with my own eyes, ears, breath, and occasionally my bruised elbows, the paper sharpened. New lines appeared. Tiny symbols formed beside valves. Patrol intervals wrote themselves in the margins after I observed them twice. The tool did not give me answers. It organized earned knowledge. That mattered. By the time the city bells above faintly rang the 14th hour, I had confirmed 12 locations, 3 patrol habits, 2 supply routes, and 1 hidden reset cycle. My body still hurt, but the dungeon no longer felt like a maze. It felt like a machine pretending to be a monster. And machines have habits. My first growth milestone had been sensing airflow. My second was predicting it. At a junction marked by 3 pipe routes, I stopped before turning left. The lantern flame leaned right, then snapped upright, then leaned right again. 7-second pull. Empty pause. 7-second pull. That meant a patrol drain was breathing through the right tunnel. Something large used that route. In the first timeline, I had stumbled into a glass hound there and spent 2 days hiding in a drainage hollow. This time I waited. A minute later, claws clicked beyond the dark. The glass hound passed within 10 steps of me, its body almost invisible except for the faint outline of ribs refracting lantern light. I did not fight it. I did not need to. When it turned the corner, I slipped behind it and crossed the drain before the airflow reversed. The map warmed. Confirmed patrol cycle. Safe crossing window, 18 seconds after hound passage. My lungs opened like I had inhaled clean rain. Milestone 5. First predictive use. The Maw rewarded patience with survival. The third milestone came when I reached the back of the Pearl Font chamber. On the official map, the Pearl Font was a dead-end reward room. Hunters entered from the east, killed whatever guarded it, collected pearls, and left. On the maintenance map, it was a pressure hub connected to 4 upper chambers and 1 sealed auction-grade vault. In the first timeline, Bren had found that vault using my stolen notes. He sold the contents for 8,000 gold marks and called it instinct. I found the control pipes behind the chamber wall and placed my palm against the glass. 4 chambers active. 1 vault dormant. Reset valve locked until full pressure alignment. I did not open it. Not yet. Taking treasure before proof would make me look exactly like what Bren wanted me to be. A porter who separated from formation for personal gain. Instead, I adjusted 1 small airflow gate with the tip of my belt knife. Just enough to delay the Pearl Font's best reward. Not steal it. Delay it. A bell tone traveled through the pipe. Far away, I heard Bren shout. Very satisfying. Not cruel. just acoustically satisfying. A narrow crack above me opened, carrying voices from the reward chamber. "This is impossible," Corin said. "The chamber should have produced at least 2 blue pearls." "Then you miscast," Bren snapped. "I did not miscast." Tessa's voice cut in. "We've cleared 3 rooms and every reward is low grade. Maybe the porter was doing something." Silence. Then Bren said, colder, "Kade ran. That is what he did." My fingers tightened around the lantern handle. There it was, the first false claim. The dungeon had recorded separation. Bren was already editing the story. I took out 1 red flare, sparked it, and held it near a maintenance vent leading toward the public scout channel. Red smoke curled through the crack, not enough to signal rescue, just enough to stain the airflow. Myra would see it if she was near the north ledge. I hoped future legends started early. At 16:10, I pulled the north maintenance bell rope. 3 chimes rolled through the tunnel. Not 2. 3. In the public route system, 2 chimes meant minor route obstruction. 3 meant unauthorized separation risk. Most hunters ignored maintenance bells because they sounded old and embarrassing. Scouts did not. 10 minutes later, Myra's voice echoed through a narrow grate above me. "Kade Mercer." I closed my eyes for half a second. Then I climbed to the grate. Myra crouched on the other side, face shadowed by her hood, one cheek streaked with red flare smoke. "You're alive," she said. "So far." Bren filed a moving route update. "He said you broke formation during a bat surge." "Of course he did." Her eyes flicked to my lantern, my torn sleeve, the map half hidden under my bracer. "Can you prove otherwise?" "Not yet." That is an inconvenient answer. I'm an inconvenient person. Despite everything, her mouth almost twitched. I slid a copied route tag through the grate. I had taken it from Bren's discarded chalk strip before the mirror corridor. It bore his party mark and the planned side arch symbol. "Log this with the scout desk," I said. "Don't accuse him yet, just timestamp it." Myra took it carefully. "Why trust me?" "Because in 3 years, you become the only scout in Vaer City who refuses bribes from 3 noble houses and survives. Because you found me when everyone else stopped looking. Because when I woke up in the infirmary with my throat too raw to speak, you left water by my bed and told the guild clerk to stop writing until I could answer." I said none of that. I said because you check Wick amendments. She stared at me for 1 long second. Then she nodded. "What do you need?" "Witnesses at the outer exit before sunset. Rescue tribunal authority before midnight. And if Bren tries to file final claims early, stall him." That is not a small list. He's not a small problem. Myra looked down the dark behind me. "Can you get out?" I smiled without feeling it. "Yes," I said, "but not through the door he thinks he controls." Sunset in the Glass Maw did not look like sunset. There was no orange sky underground, no long shadows from rooftops, no birds going quiet. There was only a change in pressure. At 17:55, every upper tunnel inhaled. The outer gate prepared to seal from outside control. Hunters who respected the Maw checked in before then. Scouts confirmed stragglers. Porters counted packs. Guild clerks stamped returns. The city pretended safety was a shared value instead of a line item negotiated after funerals. Bren knew the rule. That was why his original plan had worked. If a porter was separated before sunset and the party returned without him, the leader could claim emergency tactical necessity. If the porter's own contract included stationary support language, the guild could blame confusion, panic, or voluntary departure. By midnight, the dungeon reset would harden the route record. After that, challenging it required tribunal approval, 3 witness seals, and enough money to keep breathing while the case crawled through appeals. Poor people rarely had all three. This time, I had something better. I had Bren's impatience. At 17:40, I opened a maintenance peephole above the return corridor and watched Azure Pike stumble toward the exit. They looked irritated, dusty, and under-rewarded. Tessa's left pauldron was cracked. Corin's robe hem had scorch marks. Bren's perfect silver hair had come loose around his face, which I enjoyed more than I should probably admit. They carried 5 pearl sacks. In the first timeline, they had carried 9. My airflow adjustments had not harmed them. They were never in lethal danger from me. But every chamber they cleared had paid less because Bren kept forcing routes without understanding the pressure system. Greed had turned his own ignorance into lost revenue. Beautiful, really. The outer exit arch glowed amber. A guild clerk stood beyond it with a return slate. Myra stood beside him. Behind her were 2 rescue wardens in dark green coats, 1 senior scout, and 3 porters from the East Lift Market, pretending very badly not to stare. Good. Myra had brought witnesses who understood what this meant. Bren saw them and slowed. For the first time all day, caution crossed his face. The exit gate began its sunset hum. The clerk called, "Azure Pike return check, declare formation." Bren stepped through the arch with Tessa and Corin. "Kade Mercer separated during mirror bat engagement," he said smoothly. "We attempted retrieval but the corridor destabilized, filing emergency tactical loss." Myra's jaw flexed. The clerk's pen hovered. "Time of separation?" he asked. "Approximately 11:40. "Lie." "Leader's decision?" the clerk asked. "Environmental necessity." Another lie. The exit hum deepened. At 18:00, the arch sealed behind them. From the outside, Bren turned just enough to watch the glass teeth lock together. For one heartbeat, satisfaction touched his mouth. He thought I was trapped inside again. Then the north maintenance bell rang 3 times. Everyone looked toward the service wall beside the exit booth. A panel slid open with a grinding sound that probably had not been heard in public for 20 years. I stepped out covered in dust, carrying my cracked lantern and Bren's missing blue rescue flare. The silence was excellent. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just the kind of silence that makes expensive armor feel suddenly thin. Myra exhaled. One of the porters whispered my name. Bren went very still. I gave the clerk a polite nod. "Kade Mercer," I said. "E-rank porter, Azure Pike Auxiliary Rear Support, reporting alive before final midnight record." The clerk's mouth opened, closed, then opened again. Bren recovered fast. I will give him that. Famous liars practice in mirrors. "Kade," he said, warm as poison. "Thank the deep, we thought you were lost." "Did you?" "Of course, you broke formation during the bat surge." I lifted the blue rescue flare. Then why was I carrying the unused rescue flare assigned to rear support? Corin's face changed. Tiny thing. But Myra saw it. The senior scout saw it. The clerk wrote it down. Bren laughed once. "Confusion, you must have grabbed it before panicking." "Possible," I said. "A lot is possible before records are checked." His eyes sharpened. I turned to the clerk. "I request Provisional Rescue Tribunal before midnight." Bren's smile vanished. Tessa stepped forward. "On what grounds?" "Unauthorized party separation, false route filing, suppression of rescue signal and contract structuring, intended to reduce porter liability." The 3 porters by the booth stopped pretending not to stare. The clerk looked like he wanted to be anywhere else, possibly underwater. Bren's voice dropped. "Careful, Kade." There was the 3rd warning, except this time it came from him. I looked at him and almost felt sorry for the version of myself who had feared that tone. Almost. The rescue warden cleared her throat. A living separated party member may request emergency tribunal before reset if there is prima facie evidence. Bren snapped, "There is no evidence." Myra held up the route tag I had given her. "Time-stamped at 1624, she said. "Recovered from Scout Channel after 3 chimes separation bell." The senior scout added, "Maintenance bell record confirms unauthorized separation risk. Public route log confirms WIC amendment. Exit pressure record will confirm who crossed the side arch." Corin swallowed. Tessa looked at Bren. There it was again. That tiny fracture. At 1812, the Guild opened an emergency rescue tribunal in the outer hall. At midnight, all false party claims became permanent Guild records. That gave us 5 hours and 48 minutes. Bren still thought time favored him. He had no idea the dungeon itself had been taking notes. The rescue tribunal hall under the North Guild office was not grand. That always seemed important to me. People imagine justice happening beneath golden chandeliers, with marble floors and judges wearing robes expensive enough to feed a district. The Veyer Hunter Guild handled emergencies in a stone room with 6 benches, 3 ward lamps, 1 cracked oath basin, and a wall clock loud enough to make everyone aware of time dying 1 tick at a time. At 1822, I sat on the left bench with dust in my hair and the torn map hidden under my sleeve. Bren sat on the right bench looking, offended that furniture existed beneath his rank. Tessa and Corin sat behind him. Their confidence had started leaking. Myra stood near the witness rail, calm and sharp-eyed. She had not solved anything for me. She had done something rarer. She had believed the first piece of proof before it became safe. The tribunal panel formed fast because the reset deadline forced it. 1 rescue warden. 1 guild contract examiner. 1 dungeon operations clerk. Not glamorous. Very dangerous to liars. The contract examiner was a square-faced woman named Halden Rusk, and she looked like she had personally strangled joy out of 3 departments. She placed 4 documents on the table. "Azure Pike Delve contract," she said. "Auxiliary assignment, hazard acknowledgement, sponsor liability waiver, route filings." Bren leaned back, "All standard." I almost laughed. That was always the problem with people who abused systems. They started believing standard meant safe. Examiner Rusk looked at me. "Mercer, state your claim clearly." My party leader ordered me to remain stationary behind the mirror back corridor while he moved the ranked party through a side arch. The arch sealed. He did not use the blue rescue flare. He returned before sunset and filed that I broke formation. The contract set reduces liability if I am marked self-separated. I believe the clauses were structured in advance to permit abandonment. Bren scoffed. "Absurd. He is embarrassed because he panicked." "Maybe," I said. "Check the dungeon pressure record." The operations clerk adjusted his spectacles. "Upper maw pressure records are limited." "Door pressure is not," I said. "The maw records weight and sequence at sealed arches for reset balance." The clerk blinked. That was not common knowledge. It would be in 3 years, after 24 lawsuits and 1 very angry royal safety audit. Today, it sounded like Porter superstition. Bren seized on it. He is inventing dungeon mechanics now. I looked at the panel. "Ask the maintenance ledger for mirror bat divide." The clerk frowned. "There is no public maintenance ledger for that corridor." "No," I said. "There is an internal one. North service wall, 2nd brass plate behind the cracked inspection tile. It logs pressure imbalance before midnight." Silence. Myra's eyes flicked to me, not surprised exactly but measuring. The rescue warden sent a runner. Bren's fingers tapped once against his knee. At 1851, the runner returned carrying a narrow black glass strip wrapped in cloth. The operations clerk looked genuinely unsettled. "Internal pressure ledger recovered," he said. "I did not know this panel existed." "I did," I said. Bren turned toward me. The antagonist realizing too late is not always a shout. Sometimes it is a man discovering the floor beneath him has rules. The clerk placed the glass strip in the oath basin. Water filled the carved bowl, silver and still. The strip sank. Symbols rose in light above it. No readable text, not exactly. The maw recorded in pressure marks, weight pulses, mana signatures, and sequence rings. Guild clerks translated them into official entries. The clerk read slowly. Mirror Bat Divide, 1143. 4 registered party signatures approach. 1 auxiliary rear support stationary at West Bend. 3 ranked signatures cross side arch. Arch sealed from east side. Auxiliary remains outside sealed arch. Bren said, "Tactical necessity." The clerk continued. Blue rescue flare not triggered. Return pressure shows 3 ranked signatures exiting lower crescent route at 1756. Auxiliary signature exits maintenance service wall at 1803. Examiner Rusk turned a page. Party leader Holt, why was no rescue flare triggered? Bren spread his hands. The corridor destabilized. Pressure record does not show destabilization. It shows what the dungeon shows, not what we experienced. That was clever. Not enough, but clever. I leaned forward. Then asked the dungeon whether the maintenance route was stable. The operations clerk stared at me. "How would you know that?" I pulled back my sleeve. Not fully, just enough to reveal the torn map's edge. Bren's eyes locked onto it. Recognition flashed. Not from this timeline. From greed. He did not know the map, but he knew value when he saw people react to it. "This is private property," I said. "A personal survival map. It updates only after I personally confirm a location. It cannot be used to accuse anyone by itself, but it can identify which internal records to check." Examiner Rusk's eyes narrowed. "A self-updating dungeon document." "A limited one." "Can it fabricate records?" "No." "Can you?" "Yes," I said. "That is why I am asking you to verify against guild and dungeon ledgers." Myra's mouth softened for half a second. Bren looked less amused. The panel ordered 3 more checks. Maintenance tunnel A3 confirmed. North bell rope confirmed. Reward chamber control line confirmed. Each record showed the same thing. I had moved through service spaces after being separated, not before. I had not fled formation. I had not abandoned the party. I had survived the abandonment. At 20:07, Bren changed tactics. "Kade has clearly accessed restricted dungeon infrastructure," he said. "That is itself a guild violation." There it was. When denial fails, accuse the victim of surviving incorrectly. Examiner Rusk looked at me. "Mercer." I nodded. Emergency survival access is permitted under Porter Safety Code 14 if separated by sealed barrier, and no rescue signal is triggered by ranked combatants. Rusk stared at me. Bren stared too. A porter knowing the law is apparently considered rude. I added, "The code was written after the Ashgate collapse 9 years ago. It has not been removed, just ignored." The rescue warden checked the codebook. Then she smiled. "Barely." "Correct." Bren's face went flat. At 21:15, the tribunal requested all sponsor-side contract attachments. That was when Tessa whispered, "Bren." He did not answer. Corin looked pale. Because the illegal abandonment contract had begun to surface. Not as one villainous scroll. as 4 standard forms doing one illegal thing together. Exactly as designed. And exactly as recorded. By 22:03, Bren Holt stopped looking like a hero. He still looked polished. People like Bren do not fall apart all at once. They crack in expensive layers. First went the easy smile. Then the relaxed posture. Then the wounded dignity. By the time Examiner Rusk laid the sponsor waiver beside the hazard acknowledgement, even his armor seemed louder than him. The tribunal notes a structural interaction, she said. Auxiliary rear support clause, stationary duty acknowledgement, combatant priority discretion, voluntary formation departure reduction. Bren said those are common clauses. Together, they reduce sponsor liability if a porter is ordered stationary, separated by a ranked party, then reported self-separated. That is an interpretation. It is a pattern, she said. I liked her. Not warmly. I did not know her. But in that moment, I appreciated anyone who could make the word pattern sound like a door locking. Bren leaned forward. This is a politically motivated attack on a ranking hunter. Mercer is poor. He is desperate. He has somehow obtained restricted dungeon knowledge and now wants compensation. There it was. Poor means liar. Desperate means criminal. Alive means inconvenient. I folded my hands so nobody could see them shake. Myra saw anyway. She stepped to the witness rail. I have a statement, she said. The rescue warden nodded. Myra spoke clearly. At 16:24, I recovered a route tag from a maintenance scout channel after 3 North Bell chimes. Earlier, before entry, I observed Mercer amend a missing wick bundle through proper supply procedure. Holt dismissed the safety concern. After separation, Holt filed a moving route update claiming Mercer broke formation. That update was filed before any rescue attempt was logged. Bren snapped, "You have always had an issue with rank parties." "I have an issue with dead porters," Myra said. The room went quiet. That sentence landed harder than any spell I had ever seen. Bren's eyes narrowed, careful scout. Myra did not blink. I am. The clock ticked. 22:19. Less than 2 hours before reset. The operations clerk placed another glass strip in the oath basin. Reward chamber records from Azure Pike route. Bren frowned. How is that relevant? I answered before the panel could. Because he is going to claim tactical necessity from unstable chamber behavior. The chambers were not unstable. They were under-awarded because pressure alignment was incomplete. Corin stared at me. You adjusted the chambers. No, I said. I observed the chambers. I adjusted one airflow gate after separation. In a maintenance area I was legally allowed to access for survival. The low rewards before that were caused by root pressure imbalance. The clerk read the chamber record. First chamber, incomplete patrol displacement. Auxiliary proximity corrected vent. Reward improved. Second chamber, supply pest hazard cleared before party arrival. Third chamber, rank party forced route. Pressure misaligned. Reward reduced. Fourth chamber, rank party forced route. Pressure misaligned. Reward reduced. Pearl font, control line delayed after auxiliary survival access. Vault dormant. Bren's head turned slowly. Vault, he said. Greed survived longer than dignity. The room noticed. Examiner Rusk looked at him over the document. I almost thanked him for helping. Instead, I said, the Glass Maw contains maintenance-controlled reward structures. They were dismissed as worthless service routes because no ranked hunter wanted to crawl through them. In the first, I stopped. Careful. I could not say first timeline. Not here. Not like that. In my experience underground, I corrected, Those tunnels control chamber pressure, patrol displacement, and reset timing. That makes them operational infrastructure, not treasure rooms. The rescue warden looked at the clerk. Can that be verified? The clerk swallowed, partially before midnight, fully after a controlled survey. Bren stood. Enough. This porter is admitting to withholding valuable dungeon information from his party. I turned to him. There it was. The final arrogance. He thought everything useful near him belonged to him. No, I said. I am admitting that after you ordered me to stay behind and left me separated behind a sealed arch, I used survival knowledge to reach a legal exit before your false report became permanent. Bren's face flushed. You ungrateful little. Party leader Holt, Examiner Rusk cut in, sit down. He did not. That was his mistake. Not the first, not the worst, but the public one. I carried him, Bren said, voice rising. I gave him a place in a ranked delve. I put my reputation on a porter with no mana, no sponsor, and no future. And this is how he repays me. The oath basin rippled. Everyone saw it. Magical oath rooms are funny like that. They do not care about confidence. They care about statements made under active review. Examiner Rusk looked at the basin. Repeat that, she said. Bren froze. I looked at the water. The basin had reacted to no future. Not emotionally. Legally. Guild law prohibited ranking hunters from recruiting support staff under knowingly prejudicial abandonment risk. Publicly calling a contracted porter disposable inside a tribunal while the linked contract set sat on the table. Unwise. Very unwise. Myra's eyes widened slightly. She understood. So did Rusk. The examiner touched the 4 contract pages. Party leader Holt, she said, each word precise. Did you recruit Kade Mercer because his financial status and low rank made him unlikely to challenge a self-separation filing? Bren's mouth opened. No sound came out. The oath basin waited. That was the hidden leverage. Not my map. Not the maintenance tunnels. Not even the dungeon pressure record. The real engine of consequence was that Bren's entire plan depended on everyone accepting porters as too small to count. And he had just said the quiet part in front of the one room where quiet parts became evidence. At 22:41, Corin broke. We didn't know he would survive, he whispered. Tessa closed her eyes. Bren turned on him, shut up. Too late. The oath basin flashed silver. Examiner Rusk spoke into the record crystal. Tribunal notes admission by ranked party member Corin Pell, indicating prior knowledge of probable non-survival. Corin looked like he might faint. Tessa's voice came next, low and bitter. You said the waiver covered it. Bren stared at her. The room held its breath. The basin flashed again. And just like that, the famous Azure Pike party stopped being a party. It became 3 people trying not to be the last one holding the crime. The official reversal happened at 23:18. That time is burned into me. Not because it was dramatic. It was not. No thunder, no sword duel, no monster bursting through the wall to confirm my moral superiority. Just Examiner Rusk reading provisional findings while Bren Holt sat very still and watched his life rearrange itself into consequences. Finding 1, she said, Kade Mercer did not voluntarily depart formation. The record crystal pulsed blue. Finding 2, Azure Pike ranked members crossed a ceiling side arch while auxiliary rear support remained stationary under direct order. Blue pulse. Finding 3, no rescue flare was triggered despite known separation. Blue pulse. Finding 4, Return filing by party leader Bren Holt contained materially false statements before final reset. Blue Pulse. Finding 5. Contract structure indicates deliberate reduction of porter liability protections through combined clauses. The Oath Basin flashed silver. Finding 6. Statements by Corin Pell and Tessa Vane indicate awareness of abandonment risk and reliance on sponsor waiver. Corin covered his face. Tessa stared at the floor. Bren said nothing. Smartest thing he had done all day. Unfortunately for him, silence after proof is not strategy. It is just lack of material. The rescue warden added the emergency order. Before midnight reset, the tribunal suspends finalization of Azure Pike's root claims. All party statements related to Mercer separation are frozen pending full guild inquiry. Bren Holt's leadership authority is suspended immediately. His hunter license is provisionally seized until disciplinary review. Bren finally moved. You cannot seize my license without council approval. The warden looked almost bored. Emergency rescue tribunals may suspend licenses when false reporting creates risk to living support staff. I have sponsors. You may inform them from the waiting bench. I admired her too. Again, not warmly. Just professionally. Then the operations clerk cleared his throat. There is also the matter of maintenance tunnel A3 and related infrastructure. Every eye shifted to me. The part where survival became property law. Vayer City dungeon rights were divided into 3 categories: combat route claims, extraction rights, and operational discovery rights. Combat routes went to the party that cleared monsters. Extraction rights went to licensed harvesters. Operational discovery rights were rare, boring, and usually belonged to the guild. But there was an old rule from the city's founding charter. If an unregistered infrastructure path was discovered, personally mapped, and used to preserve life before official registration, the discoverer held first survey rights. Nobody cared because nobody discovered maintenance tunnels. Nobody except desperate porters left to die. The clerk looked uncomfortable. Mercer appears to have personally confirmed and exited through an unregistered maintenance path linked to reward control infrastructure. Under Charter Clause 7, he may petition for first survey rights. Bren's head snapped up. No. There it was. The cleanest word he had spoken all night. I looked at him. He looked back with raw hatred. Not because he felt guilty. Because he understood what he had lost. The maintenance tunnels were not worthless. They controlled reward chambers, supply routes, patrol cycles, reset stability. Every guild party in Vayer City would eventually need them, whether for profit or safety. And because Bren abandoned me inside them, he had handed me the legal key. Examiner Rusk turned to me. Do you wish to petition? In the first timeline, I would have said yes too fast. I would have grabbed anything that looked like safety. I would have thought rights meant protection. This time, I had learned better. Rights without terms become bait. I petition with conditions, I said. Rusk's eyebrow lifted. State them. I took out the torn map. The room leaned toward it like flowers toward sun. I kept it in my hand. First, maintenance tunnel survey data is not to be assigned to combat parties without licensed scout review. Myra's eyes flickered. Second, any route using maintenance infrastructure requires porter safety check-in before and after entry. The porters at the back stood a little straighter. Third, no support worker may be assigned stationary rear duty beyond line of sight, unless the order is logged through a rescue ward or scout witness. The warden nodded slowly. Fourth, contract clauses affecting abandonment liability must be reviewed as a combined set, not separately. Examiner Rusk's pen moved faster. Fifth, I retained first survey rights to Maintenance Tunnel A3, North Bell Channel, and related Upper Maw Service passages, with Scout Myra Thorne appointed as independent route verifier. Myra looked at me. For the first time all night, surprise broke through her composure. Bren laughed harshly. You think the guild will give a porter infrastructure rights? The oath basin did not flash. That was just him being insulting, not technically lying. I smiled. No, I said. I think the guild will do it because the alternative is explaining why a living porter reached an exit through unregistered infrastructure after a famous party abandoned him, and then the guild tried to take the discovery too. The room went quiet again. There are sentences that do not need magic. The rescue warden looked at Examiner Rusk. Rusk looked at the clock. 23:37. 23 minutes before reset. Provisional rights granted pending council ratification, Rusk said. The record crystal pulsed blue. Bren stood so fast the bench scraped stone. This is theft. I turned my cracked lantern in my hands. No, I said, this is documentation. He looked like he wanted to say more. Then the guild guard stepped closer. At 23:52, the tribunal finalized the emergency record. At midnight, the dungeon reset rolled beneath us. The floor hummed. Far below, doors closed, chambers refilled, patrols returned to their habits, and every lie Bren had tried to file hit the tribunal freeze like water against glass. For the first time in 2 timelines, midnight passed without burying my name. After people lose power, they often discover manners. It is one of the lesser-known miracles of civilization. At 00:17, Bren Holt asked to speak with me privately. Examiner Rusk said no before I could. I appreciated that. At 00:24, his sponsor representative arrived wearing a velvet coat, 2 rings too many, and the expression of a man who had been dragged out of bed to watch money catch fire. He did not ask if I was injured. He did not ask what happened. He looked at me and said, "This can be resolved cleanly." I looked at his rings. I agree. His shoulders relaxed. For a fair compensation package, you can withdraw your rights petition and allow the guild to handle internal discipline. There it was. Cleanly in sponsor language meant quietly. I had heard enough quiet in my first timeline to last a lifetime. What compensation? I asked. Myra glanced at me. Not worried. Curious. The representative smiled. 200 gold marks. Behind him, one of the porters inhaled sharply. 200 gold marks was more than I had ever held. It would buy my mother's lung tonic for years. It would clear my debt marker. It would get me new boots, a room with a window, maybe even enough food that my ribs stopped treating shirts like curtains. In the first timeline, I might have taken it. Not because I was weak. Because poverty makes every offer sound like oxygen. I looked at Bren. He was watching me with cold certainty. He thought I could be priced. I turned back to the representative. No. His smile tightened. 500. No. 1,000 and a public commendation for bravery. No. The word became easier each time. His eyes hardened. Young man, do not confuse temporary sympathy with lasting influence. Myra moved half a step closer. I did not need her to defend me. But I noticed. That mattered more than I wanted to admit. I said, I am not selling the rights petition. I am not withdrawing the false filing claim. I am not signing any silence agreement. And if you offer my mother money before the inquiry closes, I will add witness intimidation to the tribunal record. The representative stared. I smiled politely. Clean enough. He left at 39. Bren's family lawyer arrived at 01:10. Tessa's aunt arrived at 01:25. Corin's academy mentor arrived at 01:42, looking like a man regretting every recommendation letter he had ever written. By dawn, the collapse had spread through the city's Hunter Quarter. Azure Pike's next 3 delve contracts were suspended. Bren's sponsor froze his performance bonus. The guild removed his portrait from the recruitment hall so fast there was a clean square on the dusty wall where his face had been. Tessa accepted a cooperation sanction by sunrise. 6-month rank freeze, fine, mandatory testimony, no leadership eligibility for 1 year. Corin cried during his statement. I did not enjoy that exactly. He had helped leave me, but he was 23, ambitious, cowardly, and not the architect. Consequences do not need to be identical to be fair. Bren refused to admit anything. That made his worse. 2 days later, the full inquiry opened. This time, I did not sit in an infirmary bed while other people wrote my life smaller. I sat at the witness table with my map beside me, Myra at the scout rail, and 3 Porter representatives behind us. The inquiry reviewed 6 prior Azure Pike delves. 2 showed suspicious support staff losses. 1 showed a Porter injury written as equipment misuse, when the rope record suggested deliberate overloading. Bren's famous guide drafts were subpoenaed from his publisher. That was the part I had waited for. Holt's Principles of Maw Flow contained 3 diagrams he should not have known yet. Not in this timeline. Not unless he had already stolen them. But Regression had changed things. He had not stolen my future notes this time. So where did those diagrams come from? Simple. They did not. His current drafts were empty. His publisher testified that Bren had promised a revolutionary Maw guide after this delve. He had already sold pre-order rights based on expected discoveries. His sponsor had advanced funds against it. The guide he became famous for in the first timeline had depended entirely on me being abandoned, surviving long enough to learn, then being weak enough to rob. Without my notes, Bren had nothing. That was the quietest revenge of all. Not taking back what he stole. Preventing the theft before it could become his legacy. On the 4th day, Bren tried one final angle. He claimed my map was a dangerous artifact and should be confiscated. The guild brought in an appraiser. She tested it with mana thread, oath water, ash powder, and 1 tiny silver beetle that ate cursed ink. The beetle sneezed and refused to continue, which I chose not to take personally. Her conclusion was simple. Bound personal dungeon record, she said, limited to confirmed observation, no compulsion, no predictive curse, no external control, legally equivalent to a scout notebook with reactive indexing. A scout notebook with reactive indexing. Very glamorous. Myra whispered, that may be the most boring description of a miracle I have ever heard. I whispered back, boring descriptions survive committees. She looked at me then, and for a moment the room felt less cold. Nothing dramatic happened between us. No confession, no grand romantic speech while legal clerks shuffled exhibits, just a shared look between 2 people who understood that survival is easier when someone competent stands near you. By the end of the week, Bren Holt lost his hunter license. Not suspended. Revoked. The tribunal found deliberate false filing, negligent abandonment, contract manipulation, and attempted suppression of rescue procedure. His sponsor paid fines large enough to make auction houses whisper. His party dissolved. His guide contract collapsed. His name came down from the North Gate ranking board before sunset. And the city learned a new phrase. Combined clause abandonment. It sounded dry. It saved lives. 3 weeks after the tribunal, I returned to the Glass Maw entrance with a new lantern. Not gold, not jeweled, Nothing dramatic enough for a bard. Just a sturdy brass-framed survey lantern with 3 wick settings, a pressure hood, and a handle that did not cut my palm if I held it too long. Myra said it was ugly. I said ugly tools survived longer. She said that sounded like something ugly tools told themselves. By then, the council had ratified my provisional rights. Maintenance Tunnel A3, North Bell Channel, Mirror Bat Divide Service Seam, Ticknest Bend, and the Upper Pearl Font Control Line were registered under Mercer Survey Charter. The Guild tried to bury that name under 12 procedural phrases, but the porters shortened it immediately. Cade's Crawl. I hated it for about 2 minutes. Then I heard a porter laugh while saying it, not bitterly, not fearfully, just like the route belonged to someone on our side. So I let it stay. The new rules did not fix Vare City overnight. No rule does. But they changed the cost of cruelty. Every party contract now had to show support clauses together on one page. No more hiding abandonment traps across 4 forms. Stationary rear orders beyond line of sight required scout or rescue log confirmation. Blue rescue flares had to be physically checked on return. Porter families received full compensation if a party failed to trigger rescue procedure before filing a loss. And the most beautiful line, in my personal opinion, was Safety Amendment 7. Maintenance infrastructure discovered through survival access could not be seized from the discoverer without compensation, credit, and independent review. The Guild hated that one, which reassured me it was useful. My mother cried when I cleared the debt marker. Not loudly. She was not a loud woman. She held the stamped receipt in both hands, sat at the small kitchen table, and breathed without coughing for nearly 1 full minute. That did more to me than Bren losing his license. Revenge can warm you for a day. Watching someone you love become less afraid can warm places revenge never reaches. I did not become rich immediately. People love to imagine endings where the underestimated porter walks out with a vault of jewels and buys the city by dinner. No. I spent the first month in meetings. So many meetings. Guild Safety Board, Scout Licensing Office, Porter Association, Dungeon Operations, Council Subcommittee on Infrastructure Classification, which was exactly as thrilling as it sounds. But every meeting put another stone in the road behind me. Myra became the official independent verifier for the Upper Maw Maintenance Survey. She pretended not to be pleased, poorly. Her scout rank rose from D to C within 6 weeks because apparently revealing a major safety scandal and helping document unregistered infrastructure counts as competence. Stunning discovery. We worked well together. I mapped airflow and reset pressure. She mapped angles, access widths, hazard markings, and rescue viability. I knew the maw from terror and memory. She knew how to make knowledge legible to people who had not crawled through darkness for 11 days. That difference mattered. My map kept updating. Slowly. Honestly. Annoyingly. It still refused to confirm anything I did not personally verify. If Myra checked a side chamber without me, the map did not care. If I guessed a patrol based on prior knowledge but failed to observe 2 cycles, the ink stayed faint. It rewarded attention, not arrogance. Good. I had seen what arrogance did with stolen knowledge. The Pearl Font Vault opened during our second controlled survey. No fight, no heroic chant. We balanced 4 pressure vents, waited for the Glass Hound patrol to pass, cleared a tick nest without killing it, and redirected 1 warm draft through the south pipe. The vault door unfolded like a flower made of black crystal. Inside were 7 resonance cores, 9 blue pearls, and a fist-sized glass seed that pulsed with stored dungeon mana. The guild representative nearly swallowed his own tongue. Under the rights agreement, the discovery share was split between Mercer Survey Charter, the Scout Office, the Porter Protection Fund, and the Guild. The Guild complained about its percentage. I reminded them they could always explain to the Council why they deserved more of the treasure found through the tunnel they had failed to register for decades. They stopped complaining. Mostly. My share was enough to secure my mother's treatment, hire 2 clerks, and establish the Mercer Porter Defense Ledger. Any porter could bring us a contract for review at no cost. We marked clause traps, missing rescue terms, suspicious sponsor waivers, and fake, voluntary risk language. In the first 10 days, we reviewed 83 contracts. 26 had dangerous combined clauses. 5 were bad enough to trigger guild warnings. 1 belonged to a noble-backed party that withdrew from the dungeon season rather than fix it, which told me everything I needed to know. Bren tried to appeal twice. The first appeal failed because the tribunal record was sealed before midnight reset. The second failed because Corin submitted additional testimony, and Tessa confirmed the sponsor waiver discussion. The city moved on from Bren faster than Bren expected. That is the cruel secret of fame built on performance. People mourn the show, not the performer. Once the poster came down, another smiling hunter went up. The guild sold new banners. Sponsors found new armor to polish. Bren discovered that the system he trusted had loyalty only to profit and liability. I did not visit him. I did not need to. One rainy afternoon, a letter arrived from him. No apology. Obviously. Just 4 pages explaining how I had ruined both of us, how we could have been powerful together, how my petty resentment had damaged Vair City's dungeon economy. I read it once. Then I filed it in the defense ledger under educational materials. Myra laughed for 30 seconds straight when she saw the label. That might have been the first time I heard her laugh without exhaustion in it. 6 months after the Glass Maw Tribunal, the first class of licensed porter scouts entered training. Not porters pretending to be hunters. Not scouts forced to beg ranked parties for respect. A real hybrid track based on route safety, supply intelligence, airflow reading, patrol documentation, and contract rights. They asked me to give the opening talk. I stood in front of 32 trainees, most of them poor, nervous, and trying not to look impressed by the new lantern at my belt. I told them the truth. Strength is not always the person standing at the front with the sharpest blade. Sometimes strength is knowing which door seals at sunset, which clause activates after abandonment, which vent controls the reward chamber, and which quiet person everyone forgot to ask. Myra stood at the back with her arms crossed, pretending she had not helped write that line. The trainees listened. Really listened. And I realized something then. In my first timeline, I thought survival meant getting out alone. In this one, survival meant making sure the next person did not have to learn the same lesson in the dark. The Glass Maw still opens every morning. Hunters still pose at the entrance. Sponsors still polish their favorites. The dungeon still waits under the city with teeth carved from black glass and secrets hidden behind ugly maintenance seams. But now when a party enters, someone checks the wick bundle. Someone counts the flares. Someone reads the clauses together. And somewhere below, a torn map warms against my wrist only when I earn the next line of ink. I did not return to the past to become a hero. I returned 5 minutes before betrayal with a cracked lantern, 11 days of ugly knowledge, and just enough patience to let the truth arrive on time. The dungeon did not make me powerful because I killed the biggest monster. It made me powerful because I learned the route everyone important was too proud to crawl through.